Good morning.
Good afternoon.
And good evening. Welcome to the Pivotal Podspective, the last one that is going to be at 9 p.m. unless we happen to do some late moving on from here, because they're going to be 7 p.m. from next week, guys. But thanks very much for joining me, who's your host, not your coast, Elliot Brown, and of course my co-host,
Adrian Darwansu.
And this is the Pivotal Podspective, as I said, the show where we get extraordinaires from every corner of the globe, hashtag flat earth, or around the globe, if you're like everybody else that believes in the round world. And we literally get extraordinaires to come on and chat about pivotal things that they've done, things, experiences they've had, or ways they have to help other people to pivot. We can all learn from our guests on this show. So, and tonight, now, without further ado, is our guest relationship coach extraordinaire, John Kenny. There you go, John.
What a welcome. I've not had a crowd jump around like that for me before.
Well, you know, we pull all the stops out here, my friend. All the stops.
Super impressed.
Hello, Jim.
How are you in sunny Hertfordshire? Although it's not sunny at the moment. It's pissing it down with rain, isn't it?
It is. It's been thundering and lightning, all manner of wet things this afternoon.
All matter of wet things, and that's a whole nother conversation, John. We won't go down that path this evening.
Sorry, I'm getting our relationships kind of mixed up at the moment.
Well, listen, I've known you for a number of years, and I've mentioned this over the last few days, talking about you coming on the show. And in fact, I feel quite close to you, although I haven't seen you for a long time, because, you know, I definitely had to deal with certain relationships that were maybe holding me back and have allowed me to move forward. But tell us about what a relationship coach does, and in fact what you do, John, because, you know, I respect you a great deal. You've helped me a huge amount, but yeah, tell us about what you do exactly.
Yeah, so there's a variety of different relationship coaches, and thank you for the endorsement there. It was a pleasure working with you, I can say.
Thank you very much. You wouldn't tell me, you wouldn't say any otherwise.
So my background's in counselling, so I trained as a counsellor about 15 years ago. And then when I realized my life was still a bit shit, I got myself a coach.
Yeah.
And they helped me to take the space that I was in as a therapist and say, okay, this is how you understand how someone works. How are you going to help someone to move forward? How are you going to help yourself to move forward? So I did quite a lot of work on myself and started to change my own life, and then trained as a coach to help people to do the same. I then trained as a hypnotherapist, and just qualified as an NLP practitioner. So I did some NLP training a few years ago.
Not the dreaded NLP.
Yeah, NLP. For those who don't know what that is, that's neuro-linguistic programming.
It is.
And about 4 years ago, I fused them all together to make up interpersonal relationship coaching. So I use a bit of counselling to understand where people are coming from. The NLP to kind of understand their internal dialogue and language that they're using and how that might impact on them. And then the coaching is like a forward thinking, how do you want your life to be, and how do you want your relationships to be? How are we going to find those for you? If people are speaking to me and they're already in relationships, how are you going to improve them? And the hypnotherapy does creep in sometimes if people have got some very deep subconscious blocks that they're not really able to overcome, or if there's something that's in the back of their subconscious that we can't quite pinpoint through talking about it, then we might do some hypnotherapy to take them to a level where they can explore their past and find the answers that way.
Yeah. And listen, and I love the fact that you're very clear on what it is that you do as well. You know, that you've honed yourself down to understand that, because we've had coaches on, and I'm not afraid to say this, that think they're coaches and they're not. Now, obviously, I know you, and I've known you for a good number of years now. So I understand what you do anyway. But there are a lot of coaches out there that give coaches a bad name, aren't there? Right. But what you do is you found something that works. And in fact, I think that in working on relationships, past or present, and possibly the future as well, or actually, in fact, the future and how you deal with those is a really integral part of growing and developing on personally. And which obviously spills over into your professional life as well. You now work, very much in the professional sort of realm, don't you?
Yeah. So my clients that I mainly work with now are people that have achieved something in their lives, that have got that kind of motivation to push themselves forward.
Yeah.
But are looking for, or they struggle to find relationships. So either they have focused for a long time on getting their business or their career to a certain space, and they've neglected that side of their lives.
Yeah.
And they're now looking for something to balance that out. Or there are people that have given up in some respects on relationships because they find themselves in this constant cycle of something destructive, unfulfilling, and want to be able to change the kind of people they attract into their lives as partners.
Yeah.
I help them to be able to figure that out for themselves.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Adrian, we know people that are in relationships, business relationships, personal relationships, don't we? Where that, and it has quite a negative impact. And not being funny, but before we started recording, we were talking about my relationships, which for years were my past, my ex and stuff was a relationship that sort of went on, and I sort of got out of that and just dived straight into a completely destructive, completely mad relationship, which I genuinely look back at like a film, and we spoke about this. So it was almost like, as you said, I almost had to go through that to understand the depth of destruction that a potential relationship can be, to sort of understand that. I wish I'd maybe learned a slightly different way, to be honest. But this, what you just said there, there must be so many people that think about that. I think they either neglect the relationship they're in personally because of their business, or they neglect the business because of the relationship they're in. One, all of the other. That's a difficult balance, mate, isn't it?
It can be, but again, if you are in the right type of relationship and you are in the right space yourself, then it can be really easy.
Yeah.
If it's about understanding your relational patterns. So how do you relate to other people, and how do they relate to you? What's your stuff? What's their stuff? And how does that impact on your life? But relationships can be quite easy if you are in the right space with the right person.
Yeah, I don't know that they're ever easy, mate. I mean, you make it look easy, I think, sometimes. Let me just bring a couple of people up that are watching. Hi, everybody, for watching, of course, wherever you are, Facebook, YouTube or not. Debbie N.O. says, hi, Elliot and co-host. Didn't say hello to John, though, did you, Debbie? It's a bit rude, but we'll forgive you. And Mike Allison is constantly watching, Mike. Thanks very much for following and supporting us. Good evening, gentlemen. He's got a question here, question for John. Can anyone be hypnotized? Before we go on to that answer, John, because it's a question I've always wanted to know, actually. My mum saying hi from Spain. Big love to you, mum. Thanks very much for watching. Yeah, John, I mean, going off the subject a little bit, can anyone be hypnotized?
If they allow you to hypnotize them, yes.
Yeah. You could have been a politician as well, John, right?
The thing with it being, I mean, I've had plenty of clients that have come in and wanting some hypnotherapy. They wanted to get to the root of their problems, but they won't let you hypnotize them because there's it's letting go of control, and some people won't allow that to happen. And no matter how relaxed you can get them to be, maybe like a meditative state, they won't allow you to take them to that kind of level where you can really do the deep and meaningful work.
Yeah, I mean, I did have somebody try to hypnotize me, actually, and that just didn't work at all. But I would love to sort of be hypnotized. I don't know what I want out of it, but I would love that. Hopefully that's answered your question. Debbie has now obviously come on and said, I said hello before your guest came on. All right, okay. So thanks, Debbie. Anybody on Instagram, by the way, I've just popped on Instagram on my phone. Hi, Finchy, how you doing? If you want to see the show, not just hear the voices, then go over to Facebook and check us out either on my Facebook page or Essex Business Radio or YouTube. You can check that out as well. Make sure you go over, subscribe, smash the like button, and make sure you get over there. As a Facebook user said, hello, that's probably Connie. Hi, Connie. How you doing? Thanks for joining us. And Mike saying thank you. So, relationships, Adrian. I mean, how are your relationships, mate? How do you think your relationships are? I mean, we've spoken about a few bits before and things that you've said that maybe have held you back, and whether you're open to talk about this or not. But there are
basically all my relations since I was a child, they were kind of, I never really had one night stands or things like that. They're always long relations, but in all of them I put quite loads of, I don't know, feelings, let's say, even when I was younger as a child, so I got into, I had my first love. That was a bit of a destructive relation, to be honest, and probably all the others before that, just because again, I was looking for way too much affection and was not getting it back and stuff like that. But now I'm with my fiance. We just got engaged last year in December, and we're together for 10 years now, right?
10 years, wow.
We had actually we know each other for about 16 years almost, something like that. But yeah, we obviously had our ups and downs. We even had the breakup, which it worked out in a way, because I said I'm in the breakup just because I got into a point in my life where I said I need to figure out things with myself, because I know I wasn't doing good for any of us in the relation. And it wasn't fair to any of us. And then, we just continued from there. So it was interesting.
Yeah, so you addressed your relationship, didn't you? And sort of,
yes.
And went and sort of found yourself, and you've come back together. So how often does that happen, John?
I think that's a very good point Adrian's made, actually, that you will attract the kind of relationships depending on what space you're in. So if you've got unresolved issues from your past, or you've got certain ways of believing things, or you've got just this kind of concept of what relationships are all about, you have a tendency to keep attracting the same types of things, and you'll take your problems into those relationships time and time again, and you're likely to attract a similar type of person time and time again. So you keep enacting that kind of cycle pattern over and over again. So it's interesting that Adrian decided, he realized, had that self-awareness to say, actually, you know what, I'm bringing some shit to this relationship and I need to go and sort that out in order for this to work.
Yeah.
You went and worked on yourself, and you let go of that stuff, and you went back to the relationship, and it's been a much healthier space for you ever since.
Yeah.
I hope so. I'm still working on it. I think it's a constant work. To be
it's
honest.
always work in progress.
We're always a work in progress. There's always more we can do.
Listen, if you're watching this and you agree with this, then give us a thumbs up. Give us some hearts and let us know you're watching. We want to get some interaction. We've got so many people are in codependent relationships. Sadly, that's definitely Connie. I think she said, "Yep, that's you were right." Adrian, apparently. Mike's loving the new look. Have you got a new look, Adrian? What's the new look? Is it the glasses?
I think the lights are better now. The glasses, maybe I haven't.
I should have worn my glasses. We could have been like the three Ronnies, couldn't we?
Exactly. Yeah. So thank you for that, Mike. Thank you.
The Ronnies reference is only for probably our older audience, to be fair. So we've got Mike saying, guys, I've been married for 43 years now, albeit to three different women. That's a great comment.
43 years, that's good going.
And Cody's given us a little okay to let us know she's watching. Thanks very much for watching, Cody. I mean, listen, I think there's a lot to be said there. And do you know what? It scares me sometimes, John, when you talk about that and people getting into those same relationships. I do find myself mirroring things with the people I see and reacting. My reactions, are that I'm trying to actually take control and actually better myself at the moment by doing meditation, breathing exercises, certain routines in the morning and the evening, which I'd never done before. Definitely made a marked difference when I actually started doing this we talked about this last night, when we, Adrian, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I had a bit of a break last week from doing it, and in fact the beginning of this week, because I sort of did other things and felt completely different again. I felt actually started getting those sort of that slightly anxious feeling, that sort of feeling like I'm beating myself up for not doing certain things in certain ways. So, do you, I mean, I talk about this quite openly because I think it's good to do this because I'm a cynical bastard and I often think these things aren't going to work. And so must probably 70-80% of the world as well. But do you sort of utilize things like that, and try and get practice, daily routines and practices? Do you work with your clients on things like that as well?
Yeah, so I get, again, depending what comes up for people. I mean, everybody will have their own way of feeling comfortable in a certain space.
Yeah.
So it's about practicing what works for you. What I generally get people to do is to really explore where they are coming from.
Yeah.
And then we'll have some kind of daily practice. It may be something like a gratitude diary, or it may be affirmations and positive statements to try and change the way that they've learned to think in the first place, if it's an unhealthy way of doing things. Some people like to meditate because meditate will slow your brainwaves down a little bit like hypnosis. So it allows for a more of a conscious relaxation, which your brain does like to do.
Yeah.
And again, if you're talking to yourself in a positive way at the same time, then because you've slowed your brainwaves down a little bit in meditation, then you can absorb that information more quickly too.
Yeah. So do you say the meditation is more about sort of slowing yourself down? Because I found when I did, and this was quite a deep sort of a proper meditation on a Saturday morning, actually, with in essence, a coach that I use, a guy called Alan Kleinhaus, who's South African guy, incredible guy. Works with Tony Robbins. Will be coming on the show as well. He basically does this meditation with a group, and I actually genuinely are happy to talk about this because I think it's quite interesting, bearing in mind I am quite a bit of a hard-faced bastard at times. But in doing what I did and the breathing techniques he was doing and the way it was working, I literally felt a release and actually had tears rolling down my face, which apparently is not unusual with people that have just started doing that as well. I feel just talking about it now, strangely, that I want to do that again because I feel like I need to do that. And then we all go around carrying all this fucking baggage, don't we? That we don't deal with. Yeah. And in fact, I've used this analogy with many clients over the last couple of years, that when I came to see you, that I just said, when you said, how do I deal with things? I went, yeah, I deal with them fine. I have these boxes. I basically put it in the cupboard, close the door, and I'm dealing with it. And you literally turned around to me and said, well, that's your fucking problem. I don't think you swore actually, because I would have done. But I think you said, that's your problem. What happens when that cupboard gets full and, we open the door and they start coming out or what's in those boxes? And I think it's a good analogy to use, and we all must do this. In fact, I don't address some of the things I'd probably put back in that, cupboard, so to speak. It is a good way of looking at it as well, isn't it?
Yeah, we all have our own way of managing the things that we don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
Whether that's putting in a box, sweeping it on the carpet, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But it does need to be processed, and because if you don't process it, it bites you in the arse when you don't want it to.
Yeah.
And this is why people have a tendency to revert to type, because you've never dealt with the stuff that's dragging you back into those spaces. So when something happens and you get triggered, you're going to react in exactly the same way you always have, because you've never dealt with the issue that's caused you to act in that way in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's about changing how you see. It's the meaning of the things are very important. So if I talk to you about something you're not interested in, you give it no meaning, you have no emotional response to it.
Yeah.
If I talk to you about something you care about, then you'll have an emotional response to it because you give it a meaning which will create that emotional reaction.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you put all that stuff in and you hide all that stuff away, but that is very meaningful, then anything that comes along which has some connection to that or likeness to that or similarity to that your cupboard's just going to fly open, and all the stuff that you've been pushed away is just going to fall out.
It does.
And you're going to get overwhelmed by it, and you're not going to know what to do with it because you've not dealt with it in the past.
Yeah.
So my I think it was my supervisor when I was a counsellor. She said, well, what we can do is we need to take them out of the cupboards, take them out of the boxes, fold them up very neatly and put them on a shelf.
Okay.
So
That's
you've
right.
looked at it, you've done something with it, and you can see it. You know it's there. You're very aware of it, so that when other things come in, you can see the similarities. You go, okay, I can see that. I can see why that's there.
Yeah.
Because I've put it somewhere where it's visible, although it doesn't really interfere with my life, and I can do something differently with it, change the meaning, let go of the meaning, let go of all the things that we're holding on to, and move on.
I think that's a really clever psychological way of looking at it, actually. And you know, if somebody's just listening to this, knowing damn well that they don't deal with things, it is a weird way of sort of getting out. You listen, it's there. You sort of bring it to the forefront without having to necessarily deal with it right there and then. It's sort of bringing it back into the realms of reality rather than sort of completely ignoring it. I've got a couple of comments going on here. Mike Allison said, I've started running every morning at 6 a.m. That's a great thing to do. It's a good way of getting...
Just wait for it, okay?
Right. Has he come back with some other comments? He's a funny guy. Same here every morning. Cody's saying, Elizabeth Pampalone, great name, Elizabeth. Thanks very much for joining. Hi to you.
Hi.
Mike has said, yeah, Cody, but I run to the bathroom, then go back to bed. This guy's got a great sense of humor. Elliot, I get the same feeling when I look at my bank statement. I mean, he's a funny guy. You should be a stand-up comedian, Mike. I tend to delegate anything I don't or can't deal with it. Now, I don't disagree with that at all, as long as it's nothing personal necessarily.
That's what we do, right? We delegate all our personal shit to someone else and expect them to
I would like to come back to that after you finish reading all the comments.
We'll definitely come back to that, because I think there's two ways of looking at it. I think it's actually really a topical subject as well. And Dominic Fenton, thanks very much for joining us, my friend. I have things I'm dealing with and currently working on them to be better. And it's the best thing to do is definitely not ignore them and work on them. Go on, Adrian. What were you going to say?
So what happens usually if you have someone that you just tend to delegate things on, and they do it, they don't really comment anything bad, but they don't enjoy it, and you become a lazy bastard, and don't do your things anymore just because. How do you avoid that?
If you're again, that will be the dynamic of the relationship. So if you're talking like a personal relationship, then there is a commonality that people pleasers will attract takers.
I've seen that in couples, so that's why I'm asking, right?
Yeah.
And to be honest, I've done it at some point, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, and it's human nature to push the boundaries, So if I think I can keep dumping on you, I will. If you keep taking it, you're not going to enjoy it. I might not be aware of that, but eventually you're going to be taking on too much, and then there's going to be a massive issue. But yeah, if you're a people pleaser, your energy level has a tendency to attract a taker. And a taker has the energy level that will attract a people pleaser, because they go together very well. Because I'll give you a lot and you'll take a lot. But that can only last for so long, because generally takers don't really want to take. Again, there are exceptions to that, obviously. And people pleasers will eventually get resentful with giving and receiving nothing.
Yeah.
And then there will be a problem, and eventually it's usually the people pleaser is the one that's under the most stress, because they're giving a lot of themselves, and they're the ones who will then say this needs to change. They'll then ask for something from the taker, and the taker will go, yeah, well, that's not how this relationship works. I take, you give, this is how we function.
Yeah.
Unless they're in a mindful space and go, oh, you know what, I'm really sorry, I didn't realize I was doing that. Let's balance this out a little bit more. But on the whole, that's not why you're together in the first place. You're there because your energies have attracted on that male adaptive, quite negative level. So eventually it has a tendency to cause quite a lot of problems in a relationship. If not, the relationship will come to an end, because the people pleaser will not have anything left.
Yeah.
And if the taker is then going to say, well, I'm not prepared to give you anything, then unless the people pleasing type person has got such a destructive sort of nature, which some people do, and that's why they stay in such toxic environments, they will want something to change. They will need something to change, and that relationship will come to an end. But if they don't address their nature within themselves and the energy that they're giving off, they'll just find someone else exactly the same until it gets too much for them, and they'll just keep on that repetitive pattern.
Yeah, very true. And that's on a personal level. If you're on a professional level, though, and you're delegating things you don't like dealing with, then I absolutely recommend that's what you do, because if these things will hold you back. So that comment can be sort of seen two ways, which is why I sort of wanted to ask the question. If it's something in business, for example, and it is a role that you do not like doing, it makes you feel uncomfortable. Sometimes as entrepreneurs, we have to do things that are uncomfortable. If you can get to a point, though, where you can delegate something to somebody, you can outsource it to somebody, then I absolutely recommend the sooner you do that, the better, because I've been through that pain. I'm sure you have, Adrian. I know you have. I'm sure you have as well, John, where we carry on doing those things. It will slow you down. Just like it will if you're trying to deal with things in a personal relationship that isn't good. You've got to offload that. You've got to talk to that person. But on a business level, if you've got somebody to outsource things to, then keep that relationship just a working relationship that you can delegate, you can explain, listen to the person you're dealing with as well, because they may come back with something that's valid. But on that side, absolutely delegate as much as you possibly can, as soon as you can, because that will allow you to be able to grow personally and professionally and move the business forward as well. Would you agree, guys?
Yeah, well, you can focus on the tasks that you're best at then, can't you?
Exactly. Definitely.
And make the most of your own time, and obviously, if it's your business, make the most of your business.
Yeah, for sure. So as Mike does say there, delegate with care. So Mike's got some other. I asked myself a long time ago, what's better, an okay job done by someone else or a great job never done by you? He's really gone. He's full of these comments, isn't he, Mike?
Topic, struck a topic for him to see then.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love that. I love the interaction. And everybody, if you're loving what we're talking about, send us some yellow, red emoji, some love hearts, and pop them in the comments, and it will show up on the screen. If you've got any questions, then by all means, pop them over there, and we'll do that, or give you a shout out as well. So thanks everybody for following and supporting what we're doing. We want to be giving as much as we can by getting our guests on and chatting about all these different subjects. And I think this may feel a bit more like something personal, but I genuinely feel, and this is why John is definitely, I feel working with more professionals, because these are things that genuinely do hold, some very successful entrepreneurs back as well. You can have millions and not be dealing with certain relationship issues that are from your past or that you're currently in, that can genuinely hold you back. And, you can see people with money doesn't necessarily always mean they're happy if their relationships are not good and they're not productive and they're not fulfilling, and and you can't be grateful for what you've got around you. Being grateful, I think, is something that I try and wake up in the morning and say that I'm grateful for being alive. And I know this sort of maybe sound like mumbo jumbo, as a lot of people might say, but I think it's really important to feel grateful for certain things around you that we all take for granted. That's got to be something that you work with your clients on, John, no?
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier on, some people keep gratitude diaries. So I like to think if you can start the day off in a good space, then if something shitty happens, you fall down to an okay space.
Yes.
If you start off in an okay space and something shitty happens, you fall into a bad space.
Yeah.
If you start the day off in a bad space and something shitty happens, you'll end up in the shit.
Yeah.
So the higher you can raise your kind of state of mind, the better things will be for you on the long term, because you'll be able to manage things much easier, because no matter what happens, you're generally going to hang around if you're not in a great state or a good state, at least you're not going to generally drop below an okay state.
Yeah.
And gratitude is one of those things. That positive mindset is really important to get you over the things that could cause you problems.
Yeah.
Because if you've got something that's good, then you can balance that out with the things that aren't so good.
Yeah.
If you never think about the good things and you're only focusing on the bad things, you're always going to be in a very negative kind of mental space.
Yeah, definitely. And listen, in business, very rarely is there a day where you don't get something that comes along and sort of challenges you. If it doesn't, then to be honest, you're probably plateaued in your business, and I'm assuming you're just quite happy plodding along. unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of enterprise type people that, are business owners, or, even if you want to set a business up, or you're just pushing yourself forward in your career, then you are likely to come up against challenges, things that are going to knock you back sometimes. It could be a phone call you make where you're completely convinced that phone call is going to be the deal you're going to, and it's going to knock you. It doesn't matter how positive you can be sometimes, and how much you are willing for the good, and how much you prepped yourself for putting in a proposal or a business conversation, or you set yourself up to having a podcast, and the technology fails you, whatever it is. If you, as you said, getting yourself onto a higher plateau, and being grateful and doing those things to get you there, it's only going to knock you down a little bit, whereas you're right, if you're only at this level rather than here, when it does knock you down, you could get to rock bottom, and rock bottom is a nasty place to be, and that's going to floor you, not for an hour or 20 minutes, which it might do if you're in a good space, but it's going to floor you for the day or 2 days. And that's detrimental to moving your business forward, because then you're fucking kicking yourself and beating yourself up, aren't you? And that's it's a real bad sort of knock-on effect, isn't it?
Yeah, and depending what kind of personality you are, if you find that difficult space really hard to manage because you haven't dealt with the underlying issues, then it could take weeks and months for you to get out of that space.
Yeah,
because you just don't know how, and you don't have the motivation to do it. You don't believe in yourself enough to do it, or whatever the reason might be, and you can get stuck there for a very long time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Adrian, you had some difficulties moving back over to Romania, didn't you? A few little challenges that came.
Yeah, but you were there and you know how I treated those. So I decided to put them not even on a shelf, not under the bed, not in a cupboard. I just put them in a fucking different universe. Just didn't want to look at them at all. Right. And never look back to those. Yeah. But those were there was not relationship or anything like that. It was just some hiccups, in the logistic process, let's say.
I mean, listen, moving house is stressful at the best of times. You moved countries. I mean, at the end of the day, moving back to Romania, or after being here for 10 years, it was, there's going to be challenges, and you were so like, oh yeah, it's going to be fine. And but there is a challenge. But what the point I was getting at is that we continued doing the podcast. Yeah. I mean, I think we maybe missed one or maybe two in that whole 2 or 3 week period. But in doing that, as you said quite rightly, it was something else to concentrate on, wasn't it? It was something else to, you get to that point of the day, and it was like, now you're going to chat to somebody, you're going to get a guest on, you're just going to chat. It completely changes your mindset because you can concentrate on something else. And the reason I'm talking about that is because we've had guests on, John, that have talked about that, literally closing your eyes, concentrating, thinking about the space between where you are and the wall and blah, blah, blah. And you're doing these sort of exercises and things like that. Are there things that you use in that scenario? This is going off the subject of relationships, but it's dealing with your day-to-day stuff, even potentially an argument that you've had in the morning before leaving, or if you're working in the same workspace right now. There's been a lot of stuff going on in homes that wouldn't normally happen prior to this year because of that, that sort of impact on the home work, family, whole sort of mix. Have you had to deal with that? And have you had to get people to sort of go, we go to a different room and do something? What is it that you would do to sort of help people to get over that sort of thing that just feels like it's a wet blanket on you that you can't get rid of?
Yeah. So I've said, what would you do normally? If you go to work all day and that's your escape, and you can't do that, you need another escape.
Yeah.
Then obviously, if you need to address the issues that are coming up, you're spending far too much time in someone's company and you're completely not used to that, and you're realizing that's causing a lot of friction. Yeah. It's about just sitting down and communicating, which we have a tendency to find really difficult. Yeah. Because we're all coming from our own space and we want to be heard most of the time, and we don't have a tendency to acknowledge what the other person is saying. Yeah. So that can cause quite a lot of friction. But if you're able to just sit and communicate and say, okay, what's the issue here? Why are we rubbing each other up the wrong way? Okay, do we need some space? All right, well, I'm going to go out for a couple of hours. I'm going to go for a walk. When we were at the height of lockdown, I was just saying to people, look, use that time and go for a walk.
Yeah.
I don't like walking. Do you want to stay at home and argue, or do you want to go for a walk?
Yeah.
I don't want to argue. I'll go for a walk. Get out of the house. Just go out. And then you come back and they go out. So then maybe you've got 4 hours apart.
Yeah.
If that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. But what's your normal? Why does your relationship function well under normal circumstances? And maybe think about how you can recreate that as much as you possibly can at that time.
Yeah.
And it works sometimes. It doesn't work, because sometimes the fundamental issues behind the problems are unresolvable.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're only actually together because they never see each other. Yeah. And the vice versa as well. Some people have spent so much more time together and they've loved it, and they've completely changed their outlook on their relationship and their life, and have made sure they balance things out a bit more so they can spend more time together when things started to get back to normal. So, everything's different. The dynamic of the relationships is what will come out in the end, especially when you're in each other's company for such a long period of time.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that, and of course, there are a lot of people that have managed to deal with that much better than they expected to. But of course, then you get this other dynamic of then having to have those relationships with people through the medium of video and things like that. Right, so even in the workplace, so then you don't have that connection with people that you're used to working with. Has that sort of brought up a different dynamic for dealing with relationships, because you're now doing it virtually a lot, and in fact moving forward, particularly seeing how the networking world is changing now as well, and events and people moving to is it Remo and things like that, so you now can hover over tables and join a conference. That's gonna change the dynamics of the human sort of relationships in business in a positive way, but it's a very different way to the way we've ever dealt with it before.
Yeah, we are by essence a group species. We evolved as human beings in groups.
Yeah.
So to be connected to people physically, to be in their company, is something that we've done for hundreds of thousands of years. So this, if this does shift to become more normal, it will be interesting to see what the fallout of that. I think at the moment it's quite novel. It's only been a few months, but at long term, I think it'll be interesting to see whether that has a long-term impact on people. I mean, I'm a touchy-feely, cuddly type of guy.
You are, John.
I'd much rather be in people's company than not. Obviously, I'm also quite an introvert on occasion. I love my own space and want to be in my own space, but I like that the option is there for me to go and spend time with people. I want to take that if I can.
Yes.
But it is inherent in us as human beings, more or less, sort of most of the population, to need to connect in order to feel human.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Adrian, you do a lot of work with your clients online. In fact, you don't really have and haven't done for quite a long time, have you? Worked with people sort of face to face. In fact, you and I have probably worked closer together than you've worked with any of your clients sort of over the last sort of, well, not necessarily the last 6 months, but prior to that, we were working quite closely together. How do you see it? Because I was talking to Brian about this today. Hi, Brian Campbell, by the way, in Los Angeles. I'm sure he's watching. Big love to you and your family. I was talking to Brian about this literally a little while ago, about these conferences, and he went. There was a 2-day conference that was usually in Vegas, and it was done with, I think it's Remo, isn't it? This is the big one that people are using now, where you can hover over the tables and you see an empty chair and you join it, and it becomes in essence, a sort of a Zoom call in essence, like that. And you still get people that are sort of saying, "Oh, you've got 5 minutes until you're going to move on," or whatever. Do you see that's a way of moving with things, Adrian? And I'm assuming, will you be fairly comfortable with that as well, would you?
I kind of prefer it, to be honest. But that's just my type. I'm not really so much into, when I've been to networking events, we're going to start there, like physical networking events. I never really felt that good.
Yeah.
I just felt like there were loads of fake people over there trying to sell you shit. right?
Yeah.
So that's why
Pretty well.
it's I'm quite happy with doing things online or over the phone, because that just gives me way more time for myself, for my relation, for my things and what I want to do, and I have absolutely no problem with that. And to be honest, I don't want to meet all my clients from the beginning, or I don't want to spend way too much time trying to make someone become my client. I'm more than happy to meet with someone, and actually I think it's going to be a way more valuable meeting after we've already established a relation, right? And I think in the times that we live now, relations can be established over even emails, right? You don't even have to talk over the phone and stuff like that with them. But yeah, I prefer video calls or phone calls to establish a relation, and then I'm more than happy to meet with them. But again, not too often, just because
Not too
it
often.
doesn't make
Keep
sense.
your distance, basically.
Yeah, but
So then
no,
we've got two different.
I've had someone that wanted to meet with me, for example, weekly, all right? And I said, why? Please tell me why. You give me something to do. I do my job. The things are working. I can send you a weekly report if you want, but I don't need to physically travel to you 20 miles each way to see you and tell you, hi mate, everything is good, right? It just doesn't. Let me do something else in that time.
I think in the sort of digital world and in the marketing, the way things are these days, if it's not physical products, if you don't have a warehouse and things like that, you don't have that sort of that side of the business that's very physical. And I was in products for years, as John knows. I was that's what I was. I just sold products, bought products for years and years. Most of my selling life was products, physical products. It's changed now, and it's different, but. Yeah, I don't know that you do need to have that link or go and see people. As you know, I have clients where I go and spend time with them. It's having that one-to-one personal interaction. I can help them with certain things. We can do certain which we couldn't do on a call. Yet I add on to that more time by doing the video calls. Now, I've always used Skype for years and years anyway, so I'm used to doing that and having that interaction. But it shows that there's two different sort of mindsets. I mean, John, on that one-to-one level, John, it's nicer to have that. You get a feeling, don't you? A slightly different feeling from somebody that's in the room with you, sitting across from you, than you do on a Zoom. And I think dealt with right, of course, you can still do that. There's lots of coaches that have moved completely to online. In fact, means you can deal with people globally now, whereas maybe before you would have dealt with people that were logistically easy to get to, so they're more local.
I've been working online for 4 years.
Yeah.
For people that can't get to face-to-face meetings or prefer, I even had a guy in Hartford when I was, and I'm in Hartford.
Yeah.
And he said, I'd rather do it online. And I said, that whatever you're more comfortable with.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. If you're in the company of someone, and because of the work I do and the training that I've had, it's picking up on the unspoken. Yeah. So you can see people's body language, but if they've got their face right up against the screen, you're not going to see much. Yeah. But it's about looking for the unspoken cues in people's body language, in the emotion they're exhibiting. And you can't feel the energy as much as you would like to be able to online, but you can still see how people are reacting and how thoughtful they are and where they are in certain spaces. But it is, I do find that if you can feel somebody, especially when you're touching on certain subjects, then it does make the whole process more connected.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And probably a bit easier for you just to understand exactly what you're dealing with.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I think that's again, if you are going to be having that sort of, online relationship, so to speak, then, that trust element has to be there so that, you know that they're taking that on board. And so working with your clients, doing that, do you, I suppose maybe having a bit more contact may sort of help, as opposed to when you do, and I know this from sort of coaches, going back over the last couple of years, where you spend time with them and maybe 2 or 3 hours, maybe, but in between that, there's no real contact. Now it's a lot easier to have that contact, the regular contact, and sort of be more accountable and things as well.
Yeah, well, my coaching program is called Coach on Your Shoulder.
Yeah.
So I offer people a service where they can touch base when they need to.
Yeah.
So they sign up for 3 months coaching, and they are able to contact me whenever they come across an issue that triggers something that they would need to talk about.
Yeah.
Especially when it is looking for relationships and they maybe been on a date or they're talking to someone, something's come up, whatever it might be, so I offer them that ability to sort of send me a voice note or an email or a text. And if it's really, so someone yesterday had to drop out of a networking meeting because they were like, I really need to talk to you. This has happened. I have no idea how to deal with it. So I just jump onto a quick 10, 15-minute call with them. And that's one of the reasons why I moved away from therapy, because that's so boundaried.
Yes.
In what you're able to do with somebody, and coaching so much more freedom in kind of writing your own rules about what you're offering people.
Yeah, for
As
sure.
long as you keep it to a boundaried level.
Yeah. It's difficult. Some people just want all your time then, don't they?
Exactly. So there are boundaries in place, but it's a lot more open for people to say, I'm really struggling right now and I need to talk to someone.
Yeah.
Please, can we have a chat for 10 minutes? And then that gets that issue. Again, it's like you don't put it in a box, you don't hide it away. You're like, I need to address this now.
Yeah.
Let's do this. So
yeah. And in the modern world, we all want to deal with things immediately, don't we? You don't want to be leaving them. This last comment from Mike is probably going to hide you, I think. Actually, let me just bring this up onto screen. It's going to hide you, so you're going to have to. Oh, you can still pop your head over there, John. What no, John? I think in essence we have to adapt to changing times. I, like John, prefer to meet people face to face. However, Zoom and Teams have become an integral part of my business day over the past 5 months. It has for all of us, Mike, and I welcome it. To be honest, it's become the norm. It's made life a lot easier. In fact, as I said, I've dealt with Skype and things for many, many years. So, dealing internationally has always been a great tool, but has definitely brought a lot of people closer together, families and on the professional side as well.
And look, I'm going to tell you, because we are at the relation side, if you think about dating apps, they are extremely popular and all that. And there you don't meet people face to face. And I think people that go into dating apps, there are people that are bit afraid to go and meet people face to face and try to hit on them. So
I think there's lots of different reasons why people use dating.
I never used one, so I'm not
not
sure.
all of them are.
I can tell you that I've been prolific on both Bumble and Tinder at times over the last couple of years, I highly recommend them. But you have to be prolific to make them work. Everybody, if you think you're going to find somebody quickly, even if it is just for a bit of fun, it's not likely to happen unless you're in your 20s. If you are a little bit older, you've got to just keep on looking. That's the last note I'm going to say on that side. But absolutely, you have that information, and that is virtually virtual dating, isn't it now?
Exactly.
Yeah,
but
going back, you need to be in the right space in yourself to be looking.
Yeah.
Going back to the relations,
great deal of fun. I'm not going to lie.
I said going back to the relations because we haven't talked that much about them. It's how can you give us like 3 tips, or how do you recognize a bad relation? All right.
Oh dear.
Good question. Okay. So I would say, firstly, that they're always on your mind, but not in a good way. That you're always thinking about how they're feeling, what kind of mood they're going to be in. Are you happy to see them? So that kind of thing. So if you're constantly thinking about them, but it's like a pressurized thought or an unknown thought, and it's not like, oh, I'm really looking forward to seeing this person, I would suggest that maybe there's something going on there that you're not happy with. Okay. That you feel like your sense of losing yourself. Mm-hmm. So the relationship revolves around them. So you don't feel heard. That it's always about their problems. If you've got a problem, they've got 2. There's going
to be a lot of people going, shit.
So again, that's not a healthy space for you, because eventually you're just going to feel like, well, what's the point of me being here? Because it's never about me. And I would say also, if you feel a bit controlled, so they want to know where you're going, what time you're going to be back, how long you're going to be gone for, who you're speaking to, want to look at your phone, don't want you to have this friend, would rather you had that friend. maybe also try and take over your friendship groups. That's quite a common one, especially with people with narcissistic tendencies. They don't have a lot of friends of their own, so they ingratiate themselves into your friendship group and they try and take that over from you. So there's, you know, I've got a list actually. I've got a few blogs on my website that sort of actually go through this I think I've got a list of 10 or 15 of them on there.
Yeah, we'll give them a link in a bit. Yeah, for sure.
To be aware of around toxic relationships. So there's just 3. You know, if you feel it's never about you, if you're feeling that you're controlled, and they're constantly on your mind, but not in a positive way.
There we go. And somebody's it's clearly resonated with them. You feel exhausted with them as well, drained.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we probably all had those feelings at times. And of course, you know, relationships are going to challenge us, you know, whatever relationships they are. I think it's the fact that if that goes on and on and on is where the issue is. We're all going to feel exhausted and drained at times. That's all part of having other people in your life and taking time up and energy and emotions. But it's when it goes on and on and on is the problem, isn't it, John?
Yeah, definitely. It's where, you know, it's going to, like that person said, it's going to drain you and you're going to feel lethargic. You're not really going to want to do anything. And noticing that actually, I think is a good sign as well. You're noticing you feel better when you're not around them.
Yeah.
Is a really good sign. If you get a bit of an energy boost, you feel a bit happier because you're not in their company. Again, that's really something for you to check in with because it can be a real roller coaster sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, do you ever really get rid of those relations in a way, or they always gonna be, or it's more like you said, you know, put them on a shelf and try to deal with them?
That's your choice. That's your choice. If you want to keep people in your life, then it's about how you manage your emotional mindset when you're with them. So
because it's more about like, I kind of doubt someone just gets out of a toxic relationship and in 2 months they forget about it or something like that. I suppose there is a process that takes quite a bit of time.
It can do, yeah, depending on what kind of level they've been to. And again, how often it's happened. So I spent most of my life going in and out of toxic relationships because that's all I knew. And it took me a long time to break that cycle. And it was only when I just thought, you know what, I know what I'm doing. And now I'm not doing it anymore. And it was when I made that decision that it was when everything sort of changed for me. But I didn't know I was doing that for most of my life.
And also, how much effect does your childhood has on toxic relationships?
Everything.
That's a great question, Adrian. That's a great question.
You learn how to do relationships.
Sorry, John.
You learn how to do relationships as a kid. You learn how to do relationships with yourself as a kid. And they generally will follow a pattern. So you'll probably find that something you experienced as a child, you then start to repeat. So then it gets smashed home a little bit more. This is what these things are like. This is what, and your brain will always be looking for what's familiar, unfortunately. So, you do have a tendency to look for what you know. And you do then find that you've met someone else that's the same, or someone else that's similar, and then someone else that's similar. And you do that for a certain amount of time. And you're like, geez, I do keep doing this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I established things from my childhood that, and we've spoken about things, and we, Adrian, as well. I established things that were definitely almost programmed. You sort of almost get programmed by the situations that are going on around you that you don't even necessarily realize have affected you at the time. My parents got divorced when I was sort of 13, and I for years was like, it didn't really bother me. I was absolutely fine. I've got 2 homes to go to, and blah. But there are things that do affect you, and those are the things that you've really got to try not to impart onto kids these days, where it's generally pretty standard to have broken homes. So trying to make that as normal and as friendly as possible in a relationship is very, very difficult. I've been very lucky with my youngest, mum. We've always had a very good relationship. That's always been, pretty good, and Kean's very balanced because of it. Those are things. The breakup of the relationship with her and other people. Well, that's definitely all goes back to, when I was younger. We've got a couple of comments here that are going back to dealing with people that that are maybe sapping energy and making you feel tired and dealing with it, or when things go well, they find a reason to cause havoc. And also Dominic Fenton says when walking on eggshells as well, and you feel like you're doing that, again, we've probably all felt that, but if you're feeling that all the time, then John is probably the guy that you want to be speaking to. John, this is a subject matter we could go on for ages, because and I think maybe we should definitely get you on another show and sort of maybe touch on a couple of other subjects as well, if you'd be happy to do that. But for now, where can people find you, John? Because I mean, listen, I'm an absolute advocate for what you do. But where can people find you if what we've talked about this evening resonates with them? I hate that bloody word, but you know what I mean. If you touch on a bit of a point with you, and you sort of think, do you know what? Yeah, I'm definitely in that situation, or I've got out of that situation, but I'm still holding things from my past and from situations, from relationships I've been in. Then where can people find you, my friend?
Yeah, so as you can see on the screen, John Kenny Coaching. So just go to johnkennycoaching.com. There's a contact form there. Just fill that out, and we can arrange a time to have a chat. I do offer a free strategy call for 30 minutes online. So yeah, we can have a chat to see where you are. There's a direct link to my calendar on there as well. So if you just want to book in a time, you can just click on my calendar link, and we can have a chat. If you just want to find out a little bit more about me, there's lots of stuff on the website that you can have a look and get kind of a better idea about who I am and what I do.
Excellent stuff. My one last comment from my mum. Very interesting info tonight. Listen all hour. So you're saying you don't usually listen all hour, mum? Is you just say hello and then fuck off? Is that what you usually do? Probably. Well, listen, if mum stayed for an hour, then it's got to have been a good show. And in fact, we've actually had the viewing figures by the looks of it. I know we get a lot of people that watch afterwards, but actually throughout the show hasn't been bad. And we've had some great conversations, some great comments going backwards and forwards. Absolutely love chatting with you this evening. Thanks very much for joining us, John.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. I hope it's been useful to your listeners.
Yeah, listen, I think there's a huge amount of stuff in there that people can listen to in all sorts of parts. You could literally fast forward every 15 minutes on this if you don't want to listen to the whole lot, and there will be a little segment in there that is going to give you some snippets of things to just think about. And if you consider it, then at least you're starting to make some moves towards bettering yourself and your relationships around you. But we'll drop your link into the comments as well, John, to your website if you can, so people can sort of just go directly to find you. And when this goes up as an audio podcast, guys, there will be a link on there as well, and updating YouTube. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks, mate. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Adrian, for being the co-host this evening, of course. And listen, if you want to know what else is going with Essex Business Radio, well, I can tell you that next week our shows, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, are going to be going at 7 p.m. So next time you come on, John, it won't be so late. And Adrian, for you, it's going to be even earlier. So it's going to be 9 p.m. where you are in Romania. Make sure you tune in next week. Look out for posts on our social media. You can follow what we're doing. There's going to be loads of stuff going on in September. We've got lots of stuff going on. Music's going on Essex Business Radio. We're going to be giving you the links and how you can listen to that on the app, the Essex Business Radio app, which you can download at any good app store. So you can check that out. Also, as our social media, as I said, Essex Business Radio, apart from Twitter, which is Essex Biz Radio, BIZZ. Now, one last note. We have mentioned that we are looking for guests to come on the show. We've got lots of people lined up. In fact, over the last 24 hours, we've had at least 30 people from across the globe that are interested in coming on the show. Now, we've had a lot of coaches. So we're going to be getting a few shows where we're going to be getting coaches on. And which case, and this is the new format in a way, is we're actually going to be getting 2 guests on at a time. So it won't just be John there. It'll be John and somebody else. So we'll be chatting around a subject matter potentially, or about if it's a skill set you have, or if you are a coach, then we may be talking about coaches in business, or a mindset coach, or relationship coach. Maybe there's another relationship coach, or maybe we'll talk about a subject. So we're going to be going through that and developing that as we go. So we want feedback from you guys about who you want to get on the show and the sort of subject. So drop in the comments below any time, any post, you can drop those in. We check everything and we get back to everybody. But if you do want to get on the show, or you've got somebody that you want to get on the show, direct them to the Essex Business Radio Facebook page, click on send message, and then tap on get on a show. And in there, we'll take you through a few questions that we'll be looking at. And if we think you're a good fit for the show and our audience and us, because we want to learn from everybody as well, and we want to learn together so we can all pivot and increase and get better with what we're doing personally and professionally, then do that, and we'll go through that and we'll get back to you within a couple of days. And then, all being well, we'll get you booked in for the show. So that's the space. We're growing this as we go. Our audience is growing. Thanks again, John. Thanks again, Adrian. Big love to you all. But I'm going to sign off for now. So I'm going to say ciao for now.
Brown cow.